I actually have a lot of stuff to cover. My name is Gary Green. I'm the treatment director at Woodland Intensive Residential in Atwater. I'm also a recovering alcoholic and depressed person. I've been sober since 91. I've been pretty good with the depression for longer than that. And I wrote a book about it called In Pursuit of Joy, which is available on Amazon, and I have a whole bunch of them here in this suitcase, if anyone is interested in buying them. So I'll get started here. I call this little workshop Recovery, Nurturing It in Yourself and Others. One of the main points of my book and how I do my work at Woodland and live my life is that the things that we expect our clients to do, we should be doing ourselves. So everyone is involved in a growth process from the time you're born until the time you die. Or you should be. It's a natural thing, and one of the things that happens with people is they get stuck in that growth process for some reason, and sometimes we call those people mentally ill because they can start having some weird behaviors and so forth. Figure out my equipment here. This is a line, paragraph from my book. I'm an alcoholic. I say this not to impress or to gain sympathy or to excuse bad behavior. I say it as a simple statement of fact. It has been at various times a central fact of my life and has had a profound effect on my development as a human being. I also have a serious and persistent mental illness. That illness is depression. These two conditions interact and feed off of each other. Sometimes it's hard to tell where one condition begins and the other ends. None of this is particularly unique. There are many people, not only in this country, but worldwide, with similar issues. I've been sober for more than 15 years, and the depression is mostly a thing of the past. And I will tell you right now that recovery is hard, scary work. We work with people who are in distress, and we say to ourselves, well, why do you make these bad decisions? You know? Well, it's because the recovery is, I think, the hardest, scariest thing that a human being can be called upon to do. I look back at my recovery, there were moments that, you know, I was the most frightened I've ever been. And mostly it has to do with talking about what's really wrong with you. Pretty scary stuff. I'm going to figure this out by the end of this presentation here. I swear. Okay. How I got sick. Things about me. I'm the youngest of 8 children, which isn't, you know, I'm from the era of big families, I guess. There's a lot of big families, especially farm families. I grew up on a dairy farm. But the thing about being the youngest of 8 kids is that your older siblings get to do a lot of stuff that you don't get to do. So you sort of feel like you're not part of the group. And, you know, we didn't socialize a lot outside of the farm. In fact, my parents, I think, had one couple that they were friends with that for a while we lived neighbors to, and then we moved 100 miles away. And so they didn't socialize with anyone outside the family, basically. Another issue was we moved quite a bit during time right around when I was born. And that's a big deal when you are moving, you know, dairy cattle and feed and all that kind of stuff. Plus, we kind of became our own little society. So, you know, my older siblings, they had to change schools all the time, which they tell me was unpleasant. Now, I believe that in our family there is a genetic predisposition to depression. In my book I talk about the temperament of dairy cattle and how it appeared as though it's largely due to genetics. And just the other day I read an article that actually they studied this, and they come to the conclusion that it's like 90% of the animal's personality comes directly from genetics. We suffered from social anxiety. So what's the common term for social anxiety?
Shy.
Pardon?
Shy.
Shy. We were painfully shy. My mother used to tell us about when she was growing up on the farm that she grew up on, and they'd go to town, she would cry. She was too shy to, you know, be out there. And, you know, when I was real little, you know, 4 or 5 years old, and I'd go to town with my mom, same thing. People would talk to me. I couldn't talk to them. I didn't please people. They scared the hell out of me. And it is true for most of my siblings that, you know, we get around and talk about how it's okay to be shy. Well, it's not really, because it's an impairment. Oops, wrong button again. I gotta cut that out. There we go. Both of my parents worked. Dad, of course, put in long days on the farm. I have 3 older brothers, and the youngest of my older brothers is 12 years older than me. So when I was 4 and 5 years old, my 2 oldest brothers were in the service. One went in the Army and one went in the Navy. And the other brother, he just went. So Dad was doing all the farm work and stuff, and Mom, when she wasn't helping him with the farm work, had jobs in town that she was gone. And so my maternal grandmother lived with us, and since my older siblings were all at school or, you know, just gone, I spent a lot of time with Grandma. And, you know, Grandma and I were pretty tight. Well, then she died. And the thing I remember about Grandma's funeral is my mother telling me to be quiet because Grandma was sleeping. And no one really talked to me about what happened to Grandma, why isn't Grandma around, why are you going through Grandma's stuff, what's going on here? And so I was alone also quite a bit after that because parents still had these obligations. So, you know, it's, I think they call it latchkey kids now, where, you know, the kid comes home and there you are in your home. There isn't an adult around. In my case, I was a little bit scared every day. Didn't know why. Didn't understand it because, you know, you're little. But that's the beginning of the depression. You start with the inhibition.
you can't, you're scared, so you don't interact like normal kids do. And, you know, your social development gets stunted. And of course, right around that time, most of my siblings left home within a few years, and I went from a house with 11 people in it to a house with 4 people in it. It's a big change. So my social needs were not being met. My developmental needs were not being met at that time. So I want to talk a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, mostly because I don't agree with it. I'll tell you why. What Maslow says is that people have needs, and these needs are in a hierarchy, and that the higher needs won't manifest themselves until the lower needs are met. So he says your physical needs come first, like your need for food, water, air, that kind of stuff. And then he's got your safety needs. You know, once you've had supper and you know, had a drink of water, then, you know, you need to know that somebody's going to break in and kill you while you're sleeping. Then there's the belongingness and love needs. That's your social needs right there, where you need to, you know, human beings are social animals, and, you know, you need to feel like you belong to a group. Then there's your esteem needs, and your aesthetic and cognitive needs. You know, your curiosity needs to be satisfied. And then there's self-actualization needs. I'm not even sure what those are, by the way. But what I do know is that these needs, belongingness and esteem and cognitive, it's not that you don't have those needs when you're cold, tired, and hungry. It's that it takes longer for the deficit to kill you. Because rest assured, if you do not have these needs met, you will die sooner than if you do. Be it by your own hand or by just getting sick. So you can go without air for a few minutes, right? You can go without, are you nurses over here?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can go without food for days. You can go without water for a few days. You can go without belongingness for years. But the longer you go without it, the sicker you're going to get. The people that we work with at Woodland Intensive Residential, they're not getting these needs met. The belongingness and the esteem and so forth. So they have what we would call maladaptive behavior, which is often something that they learn in a crazy situation, and it was an adaptive behavior then out in the larger world it doesn't work.